Morning, Abotai. Continuing with some halachot of Hafrashat Challah, one of the most common questions I get from people in general, especially women, is what is the prescribed amount of flour necessary for Hafrashat Challah? This question, it's like very unclear to people. So let's start as follows. The Mishnah in Masechet Eduyot brings down a machloket. According to the Chachamim, the shi'ur, the proper amount of flour is a kav and a half, which was a measurement that was common in the times of Chazal. Okay, broken down. The Gemara speaks about it in a few different places. The Gemara brings down a kav and a half is equivalent to the volume of 43 and a third bitzim, 43 and a third eggs. Okay, how does that help us? Back in the times of the Chachamim, they used to use common fruits, vegetables, eggs, fingers, pinkies for measurements. Nowadays, it's a little bit less relevant because we don't measure like that. In order to make it easier for us, because it's the computations can sometimes be complex, the Rambam and other Rishonim and Acharonim have broken down many of these measurements so that we can understand. The Rambam in Ilchot Bikurim says Meforash that the proper amount of flour that is necessary for Hafrashat Challah is 520 dirham. Dirham was a coin that was in circulation in all Arab countries for almost 1,000 years. It's still in circulation, by the way, today in Morocco and other countries. That's the currency, dirham. They use this coin not only as money, but they used it for weight as well. The Rambam says if you have flour equivalent to the weight of 520 of these dirham, that is chayav be'afrashat challah. How much is a dirham? So Maran Zechron Avracha sent Talmidei Chachamim to the National Museum of Cairo in Egypt, where there was this big stash of dirhams from in Egypt from the times of the Rambam. The Rambam lived from 1135 to 1205. They checked all of the dirhams over there. They're almost all 3 grams. Wonderful. Now that we know that each dirham is approximately 3 grams, so multiply 520 dirham times 3 is 1560. 1,560 grams, which comes out to a little bit more than a kilo and a half. In America, we don't measure by kilo. If you convert that, it's about 3.4 pounds. A little bit less than 3.5 pounds of flour or more is chayav in Hafrashat Challah with a bracha. Less than that amount, not only forget about a bracha, you're patur, you're exempt from Hafrashat Challah. What's interesting is, now by the way, this is the halacha that the Rambam brings down. Marana Shulchan Aruch and Yoreh De'ayin Ilchot Challah brings this down. All of the Sephardic Geonim from all the generations, Maran Chida, Rabbeinu Chaim Palachi, they all bring down 520 dirham is the chiyuv of Hafrashat Challah. The only problem is, if you look in Ben Ish Chai, in Parashat Tzav, where he discusses Hafrashat Challah when it comes to matzah, the Ben Ish Chai says the proper shi'ur for Hafrashat Challah is 777 dirham, which is more than 5 pounds. And many of the poskim, Maran Zechron Avracha especially, both in Yebi'ah Omer and in Alichot Olam, says where the Ben Ish Chai get this number from. 777 is almost double than what the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch say. Why did the Ben Ish Chai say that? There are ways, there are poskei zmanenu that come to reconcile the Ben Ish Chai with Maran and with the Rambam, which really the Ben Ish Chai meant also that 560 is if you're measuring by weight. But if you want to measure the flour by volume, flour is much lighter than eggs. If you want to reach the volume of flour that will equal the volume of 43 and a third eggs, which is the shi'ur, you have to use a volume of 777 dirham of water to get there, which really basically, just to make it a little bit simpler, that means that the Ben Ish Chai might agree to the Rambam and Maran that the real shi'ur is still 1560 grams. That is that. Now again, Maran Zechron Avracha said at the end of the day, we do not hold like this Ben Ish Chai, we hold like the Rambam and Maran and all of the other Gdolei Poskei Sfarad throughout all of the generations. When he said that, famously, back in the day, when this machloket came out, he used to paskin, he used to say he had very strong questions, and there were old-timer Iraqis, people from Baghdad, living in Yerushalayim, and they got very upset at him. They said, well, you're arguing the Ben Ish Chai, what he didn't know. That's not how halacha works. Maran Zechron Avracha had very, very powerful questions on the Ben Ish Chai, and it's very hard to understand. At the end of the day, he said, we don't paskin like that, and that's the halacha. The Rambam didn't know, what Maran didn't know. You can always reverse, you can always turn the tables and ask the same question the other way around. Anyway, it became a very, very heated machloket, and there was a gentleman, Maran Zechron Avracha was once walking in the street, basically during the time when this machloket came out, and there was an old Iraqi gentleman that took things into his own hands. He took a vegetable and he threw it on Maran right in the street as a show of, in order to disrespect him for arguing the Ben Ish Chai. It was done in front of everybody right in the middle of the street. And Maran didn't say anything. Many years later, there was a terrorist attack on exactly the same spot on that street where he threw the vegetable in Maran, and this person's son was killed in that terror attack. That was everybody, it was a very famous story in Israel at the time, Hashem Yishmor, but everybody understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sticks up for, he defends the kavod of his chachamim. Arguing in halacha is not necessarily disrespectful. What comes afterwards, sometimes these things can spiral out of control. We have to take that into consideration as well. Have a wonderful day.